Hello, everybody. I've got an interesting pair of cards, I guess you could say, for the obstacle justice and strength. We're going to get to that in just one second for the obstacle. And then for the opportunity, I got the Four of Swords. Turntable scratch noise. Okay. So let's get started here. This is one of those interesting tarot situations. We've got the Marseille deck on the left. We got the Waite deck illustrated by Smith on the right. Now, Waite was a member of the Golden Dawn, and they were really into astrology, and so he implemented some changes to the tarot deck. Some of them not too intense. Added some imagery, some astrological imagery to the cards. Often like ram heads, Aries, things like that. Um, but this is a really significant change. This is very interesting, just on a from a meta kind of academic level. He flipped strength and justice, and so justice is the number 11 card in the Waite deck, and it's the number 8. Uh oh, I'm forgetting it. Um, it's the number 8 card in the Marseille. I really like to use a numerological approach. It's like my decoder ring. I like to use a numerological approach. That approach is largely derived or extracted from the Marseille deck, which is arguably the the first the first complete balanced deck that we sort of have access to historically, and it's certainly it's the foundation that the modern tarot world is built upon. Specifically, it's the foundation for the Rider Waite Smith deck. Again, the scene here on the right, and that is the foundation for all of the novelty specialty decks. So a change like this is really significant because the 11 card, like the 1 cards, like the aces, they have something in common, right? The they have a theme in common. And equally the 8 cards, the 8, the 18, and all of the 8s of the suits, they have a theme in common. And justice, it makes a lot of sense when I think of it as the number 8 card, which symbolizes the the highest balanced orderly card of the deck. Those are the 2, the 4, the 6, and the 8. And justice being in the highest one kind of represents the balance and symmetry of the higher ideals. So it's even beyond the realm of people, of human beings. Really, it starts existing on this abstract plane, and I think there's great interpretations that lie in its place there. And then here is the 11. It's kind of interesting. Artistically, he took steps to create similarities between the Justice card and the Magician, which are both that degree 1, the number 1 cards. Um, so it's not hard to find interpretations of the symbolism that make them seem like they're related. But I really much prefer Strength as the number 11 card. It's puts me in a weird position, but I think that in a way, overall, this could be the obstacle. The We could be looking at a meta obstacle here, as opposed to interpreting either of these cards. The obstacle is people people that are working with old material, traditional material, they often change it and update it and redefine it. And there's kind of like there's this concept called Chesterton's fence. There's different ones very similar to it, but I think Chesterton's fence is the common popular one. And the idea is that if you're walking around in the wilderness, walking through nature, and you see a fence, um, and you don't know why it's there. Well, I guess the exact interpretation is if you're with someone and they see this fence and they're like, "What's this doing here? This is an obstacle. Let's take it down." Or it's, a wall or something. It's like, let's take it down. It's in our way. And the Chesterton proposition is not is to resist that unless you know why it's there. If it's there, it's not a part of nature. It's something someone constructed. There's certainly probably at least some reasons why it's there, and until you understand what those reasons are, it's not a good idea to take it down. And this doesn't just need to apply to man-made things. There's plenty of things in nature that people mess around with. People often think, oh, there's this pest that eats away at my crops. That's just a bad thing. I'll get rid of it. They get rid of it. All of a sudden, they find out, oh crap, that thing was also pollinating the crops. Before I had some eaten crops, now I got nothing. Shouldn't have messed with it until you know the implications of what messing with it, you know, will cause. Um, and yeah, so I think the obstacle here could be along those lines. Now, I also, just to play devil's advocate here, I don't really think it's possible to understand anything that completely. I think that's a fool's errand, right? Like, so it that shouldn't be a paralyzing prospect where it's like, oh, I don't really want to touch this thing until I know everything about it. I mean, that just sounds to me like a lifetime dedicated to understanding that thing, and still probably dying before you feel like you totally know everything. So some middle amount, having some understanding, not just messing with it willy nilly. I love that expression. Where does that even come from? Willy nilly. Anyway, yeah. So not just messing with it, um, and then also, potentially not being held back from incorporating it into something that you're doing. Now, it's I don't know enough about Waite to be able to tell, um, how how much pressure there was from the Golden Dawn to incorporate astrology and move things around. They could have seen astrology as the more useful tool, the more useful, um, psycho spiritual. I'm not really sure what their conceptualization of astrology was. So they very well could have seen the tarot as just one extra thing to bring into the fold. It's something that a lot of religions do. It's something that a lot of corporations and companies do. You know, there's a new some new political opinion starts taking shape, and then you bring it in. Hey, we're Pepsi, and we've always cared about social justice or something. It's like incorporating the new things. The church, the Catholic Church. I remember recently they were like, "Oh yeah, like the Big Bang. That's totally a thing." I mean, God probably created the Big Bang, but they're just incorporating these newly held beliefs. Like, I wonder how long it's going to be before the church acknowledges the universe as simulation theory, insofar as they'll again incorporate and be like, oh, of course the universe is a simulation. It's just, who do you think is running it? It's God. Um, but yeah, so I think this particular pair of cards here could represent the obstacle or the warning to be considerate of how how you update um, how you update old old beliefs, traditions, with the new and contemporary. Sometimes sometimes when the environment shifts, there's a lot of there's a lot of reasons to just adapt a new thing right away. You know, you don't want to be one of those late adopters that's late to the game. But there's certainly a lot of people who like fashion is an interesting example, right? Like I used to know so many people when I had a bar that like almost on a monthly basis they always had a new look. They were just always jumping on the new trend. And an interesting byproduct of that was that they seemed like they really didn't have any personality. Like fashion isn't personality, but that's kind of how it came across. It seemed like they didn't really know what they wanted, and they were just constantly looking outwards to adapt to things, to incorporate the external world into themselves, to update themselves. Um, but yeah, so that's something to think about there. And then in terms of the interpretation of the La Force, in terms of the Marseille strength card, I think that I think that much much like the magician symbolizes this great opportunity, this great new beginning in a mastery in the mastering of things. I think where the magician looks outwards to mastering tools and objects, and you know they're symbolic, so it's also like ideas of the external. I think strength here. I mean, in the weight strength card, it's like a distinct lion that the woman is taming or finessing or charming. You know, a lot of interpretations possible there. But I like that in this one, it could almost be interpreted as coming out from under her gown, and it's flesh colored. You know, it's the same color as her skin. That color, the colormancy of the Marseille deck, that usually implies it's like matters of human beings, not not thematically dominated by the passions or the intellect or cultures and feelings or you know, resource value or order or chaos. It's just human stuff. It's like kind of balanced, kind of fallible. But yeah, this idea that there's this animal bursting forth from under her gown, you know, I think it's a nice inversion to the magician's mastery of the external. I think you know, this is maybe meant to be interpreted as mastery of the internal, that there's an animal nature. Um, there's that animal nature within us, our instincts, and that the you know the important strength to have at the beginning of this second half of the journey through the major arcana is interacting with the dark animal parts, right? The kind of like how in the first half we get the Hierophant, and then in the second half that card is replaced with the Devil in the card that occupies the same position. So it's like the Hierophant is a guide to look upwards to bigger, higher order external things. The Devil is like taking you down into the shadowy recesses of our animal nature and our id, um, and yeah, and you know, I think this could be. I think the obstacle here could be an ignorance of that, because this card does symbolize, I think, the you know, winning the battle against that animal nature, having that strength, being able to tame and control that animal. So I think the inverse of that would be either not acknowledging its existence or adopting this attitude that, you know, whatever that animal wants, well, that's the natural thing, and hence, you know, you should allow it to just do whatever it wants to celebrate animal impulsivity, things like that. I know a couple parents who have that approach to their kids, and it's kind of terrifying what the outcome is. Where they're like, whatever my child is feeling is valid, and I'm not going to get in the way. It's like, okay, you're not socializing your child at all. Great, good for you. Um, who knows? Might work for some people. I think it certainly works in the short term. Makes you not feel like a bad guy. But yeah, so there's some ideas related to those cards, and then for the opportunity, Four of Swords. I like this card a lot. Um, I was just recently doing the three. Maybe you saw that video, but I think the four is a great answer to the discordant, anxiety-inducing realizations of the three. And yeah, and I think the four does a pretty good job symbolizing the the ideas the ideas, not just your own ideas, um, and wisdom and experiences, but the ideas of people as a species, where the three often it provides this creates this huge distraction and kind of anxious, prodding at the mind because of these very worldly limitations or realities. The three card is doesn't really involve people yet. It's just of the earth, so it could symbolize like um, just like decay as a reality of life, or birth as a reality of life that's kind of terrifying. Like the the three in the major arcana, I think kind of has this theme of like the violence of nature, like a violent spring where it's just un uncontrollable growth. Everything is just fighting for sunlight. Everything is leaping out there. That could be a kind of a terrifying thing to have to contend with as well. Like the earth, the earth itself and all of its plants and stuff. Everything's just out for its own. There's nothing else shares the same kind of conceptualization of the other as humans do. Or there's like a handful of animals that appear to be able to conceive the idea that something else could have thoughts in its head, could have intentions or make observations, let's say. For the most part, everything is just growing and aiming for supremacy and reproduction and is essentially just blind to the consciousness of everything else. So that could be pretty scary too. But yeah, I think the four is a really reassuring card in the sense that I think it reminds me that we're not the first people to have to deal with this, that people have been contending with all of those physical limits and dangers and realities of the physical world. Human beings have been contending with that for a long time. They've been thinking about it. They've been creating works of art, poetry. They've been writing manuals. They've been creating sciences to get around these limitations. And I think this card is a reminder of that there are there are tombs of great kings, like the one depicted here. It's one of those illustrations that I find really sort of apt to the interpretation symbolically that I have. And I think this card is a great reminder to seek out those great thinkers, seek out those great artists, seek out those people that have been celebrated. Like, you ever wonder, like, how is it that there are musicians, playwrights, authors that produce their works like hundreds of years ago, some of them thousands of years ago, and we still know about them. They haven't been lost to the sands of time, so to speak. And I'm not saying like, I don't even mean like, oh, if you're a historian and you're studying history, you can still find a book about them. It's like contemporary cartoons make fun of historical figures, and we know who they're referring to because those historical figures are still alive. Obviously, there's not that many of them. Like, you know, classical composers of music, there's a handful. Classical playwrights in the English language, a couple. That are older than a couple hundred years. Um, but yeah, but nonetheless, there's this great body of work. There's this great body of thought and, artwork and music that has been created and preserved in an attempt to understand the world, to understand its limitations, some of the sorrows and anxieties that come with that. And I think this card is the opportunity here. I think is the reminder, like somewhere out there, there's some great books, even some great films. There are things that can blow your mind, bring inspiration into your life. You know, um, I'm just reading some Carl Jung. It's like blowing my mind, and it's such a fascinating experience that like this guy was writing a long time ago, and I'm just discovering this now. It feels like rediscovering, discovering. It's hard to say. Um, these ideas permeate our society, and it's like for someone writing at a time that, in so many ways, was so detached from the time and place that we're in now. So many of his observations are just feel so bang on, right? And again, feel like that's a testament to this idea that like human beings, you might think the things you're struggling with are new and unique to you, but there's solace in the in remembering that like you're not the first one to have to deal with this. And the three card often looks like heartbreak. You get this heart pierced by things. Yeah, man. You can find a lot of comfort in songs of heartbreak, poems of heartbreak, books of heartbreak. Some of them some of them are ancient. You could read like ancient Babylonian poems about loss and heartbreak, and like they're still relatable. So yeah, I think that's the opportunity here. Go to the library, dig up some classics, look up get the reading list for the great books. Read a classic book, read a classic um, play, listen to some music that has survived the test of time. Um, yeah, there's a lot to be extracted from the legacy that all of the great human minds have been adding to over the millennia. So take advantage of that. And I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks for watching. Drop me a like or a comment if you want to be entered into the draw for a free one-on-one reading. Take care, and I'll see you tomorrow.